to bring in Anaga Keshav. She's joining us live from Karur. We'll get her in just a bit for details of the timeline that we now have. The information we have is that the campaign was supposed to happen between 12 to 3 in the afternoon. So people started gathering in the morning. Right after that, you'd think Vijay maybe 1 hour late, maybe 2 hours late. Not really. Vijay turned up 4 hours later. At 7 p.m. is when Vijay reached that particular location. So the crowd then came together, and as his bus moved, so did the crowd. So there's one spot where everyone kind of gathered to get as close to the bus as they can. At this point, Vijay began his speech. He stopped in between because people were seen asking constantly for water. So he started telling those around him, saying, pass on water, give it to people. Now, after that, in front of his eyes, around the bus, people started collapsing. And so Vijay, again, during his speech, started appealing for ambulances to come through, to make way for ambulances to come right through. And continued his speech at that point. Ambulances were trying to make their way through. Vijay continued his speech. At around 7:30 is when, in fact, he stopped. Because at that point, Adav Arjuna, who is part of TVK, number 2 essentially, informed that a 19-year-old girl went missing. So Vijay then asked TVK Carter, saying, help find this young girl, and he leaves. Anaga Keshav is joining us with more details. She's joining us live from Karur. Anaga, there are questions being asked right now of the police. The information we have is that there was a lathi charge that took place, and at that point, all hell broke loose. There was absolute chaos. Is that what triggered the stampede, Anaga? Or was the lathi charge done to control the stampede?
Well, in fact, Akshita, what we are learning after speaking to the families of those who have passed away is that there was an abrupt power cut at around 7 o'clock. Just ahead of Vijay's arrival, there was a very random and an abrupt power cut that happened for about 30 to 45 minutes. That has triggered this particular crowd surge and chaos, we believe. I just had a word with one of those victims who passed away, and they made it very clear that their entire family was there, the water supply was there, the crowd was controlled up until just ahead of Vijay's arrival. That's when there was an abrupt power cut, and that is when all hell broke loose. That was when people started frantically walking around, moving around. That was when people ran short of breath, trying to find narrow and short escape routes. In fact, there are a few escape routes over here, but they're again very, very narrow roads, extremely constricted roads that had all the more added to breathlessness. In fact, what we are hearing is that little kids, I just had a word with the family of that little kid who passed away. They are saying that they were a family of 4 who was there. The mother has passed away, including her 2 kids aged 7 and 11. The family was then, in fact, they are saying that they used to fondly call Vijay as Vijay Mama. They knew it was getting late and they wanted to go back home, but they were there because they just wanted to see actor Vijay, because they love him so much. They fondly call him Vijay Mama. They were there just to catch a glimpse of their favorite Vijay Mama, which tragically led to the death of them. Remember, 3 out of 4 family have passed away. The mother and her 2 kids, all 3 of them have passed away on the spot because of lack of breathlessness and suffocation. In fact, I just want to pan around and show you a bit more about this particular location where the mishap has occurred. This is the extremely narrow and constricted spot that we're talking about. We did have a word with many of the families who were victims of this terrible accident, and all of them, Akshita, have one thing in common, that how narrow this particular stretch of road is. They are saying that they barely had any space to move. It was just not sufficient for movement. They did try finding escape routes, but those narrow escape routes were even more congested and suffocating, because every single one of them just wanted one thing, and that is their way out of this mess. And everyone started thronging to narrow outlets to get out of this place, which led to all the more chaos, which triggered a crowd surge, thereby leading to a sort of breathlessness in a stampede-like situation. This is one of those outlets that we are showing you on your screens. One of those outlets. In fact, there are many such narrow roads. People panicked. They frantically tried running and walking away from this particular mess, which led to all the more chaos. And when the power cut was switched off abruptly.
Has there been any response from the administration on why power was cut off amid all of the chaos? Just imagine this, viewers. There's a crowd surging, about 50,000 people. You're seeing that play out in front of your eyes. So at this point, the cops can't claim that, things, we didn't know that these kind of crowds. At this point, they've seen it with their eyes, that there is a huge crowd out of their control, 500 versus 50,000. There are people struggling to move. All of that evident when you see the footage. Why was power cut off in the midst of this?
Well, so far the administration has remained silent. They have not opened their mouths about why is it that there was a power cut. The police are trying to defend themselves. They are saying that police strength was there in adequate numbers, but clearly they have failed miserably. The police, they are saying that there were about 500 police personnel that were deployed, but when we spoke to the family members, they are saying that at the time of incident, there was no help. The police were not responsive. There was absolute cluelessness. People didn't know what to do, including the police personnel and TVK volunteers. In fact, the family is also saying that the TVK volunteers themselves were injured, so how can they help us? In fact, they also highlighted the kind of cluelessness that was shown in by the police personnel who were deployed. When there was absolute chaos happening, the police did not know what to do. There was no response. It was only after the disaster struck, that was when ambulance was called in, is what they were saying. In fact, a lot, maybe this death toll that we're talking about, 39, could have reduced if there was an ambulance and an emergency vehicle that was deployed nearby. It was only after the tragedy was struck, that was when these emergency vehicles was called in. A lot of carelessness, a lot of dereliction of duty, a lot of question to answers for. Even when we ask the police officers and officials, they have only one thing to say. It is that we have constituted a one-woman judicial inquiry. Let her investigate and then we'll give you answers. So there's just dodging of answers, zero accountability and lack of responsibility on part of both the police department and TVK.
Shifting of blame. You see a lot of finger pointing the other way and whatnot, but there are questions that must be answered from both sides here.